Yeah, really just one in the pass pro where he didn't track the three technique. Thought three technique was looping wide and got his eyes back inside. Um, uh, yeah, the rest of the game he acquitted himself very well. Everybody on the offensive line. It was a memorable game for offensive linemen in this game. Uh, the other thing I was really impressed with the offensive line, our whole offense, was the amount of hustle they had. There was an early run with Karan, and Caesar got up off the ground and was sprinting in pursuit. Mason Cole was sprinting in pursuit. It was a memorable game in terms of the effort and the hustle and the pursuit by the offense. The line, the receivers, the way they blocked. Donovan had one of those decleaters in the game. Eddie McDoom had his most physical game in terms of blocking. Nate Shanley was very effective as well. And there was no loafs in the receiver group. You could say there wasn't a lot of opportunity to catch passes, but their gray undershirts were still sweaty. They were really working hard to get the team the victory, and it showed up in a lot of areas. Showed up defensively. The hustle showed up on special teams, and there was really good play that way. Caesar was right in there. Just looked athletic. Getting up and chasing our backs down the field and trying to get in on the action and get the blocks. So very impressive.
Over on your right here, Coach Kevin.
Now that you got a chance to watch the film and go back and reevaluate, how do you think Brandon handled his first start? Everything involved. Obviously, he wasn't asked to throw a lot, but with everything involved, how do you think he handled things?
Very well. He was very effective in the first drive, and there was two throws he should have hit that came up short, and it was my feeling after the game that got to keep him more loose during the game, and had a screen pass that could have gone really big, but it was a one time we had three offensive linemen that not one of them picked up a block, and I think it was a screen to Chris Evans that should have really busted out. But good. Could have hit a couple more, and but nothing close to an interception. Nothing close to turning the ball over. Even though he took some big shots in the pocket, thought he held onto the ball well and did the things to keep us from losing the ball game. Did the things to help us win the ball game, and know he can execute all throws. So feel good going forward.
Directly in the middle, Casey.
Look at Karan Higdon's performance. Just what kind of running back does he remind you of that you've seen over the years?
Well, I think that the most impressive thing right now about Karan is a 200-yard game this week. He had a 200-yard game against Indiana. He's scoring touchdowns. He's gaining yards, getting yards after contact, and doing it in Big Ten games. I see a lot of times backs. They compile stats when they're out of conference, but to me, those statistics, what takes place in conference, is a bigger indicator. And Chris, both had huge games in this ball game. But the reminder question, not coming up with a guy just yet right now.
Okay. Thanks, Jim.
In the front there, Nick.
Jim, last week you talked a lot about how you want.
Well, I will say this though. Sorry, let me just go back. Been around a lot of great backs. Frank Gore and Toby Gerhart, Stefan Taylor, Kendall Hunter, a bunch of really good. Played with Marshall Falk. Played with Jamie Morris and was a kid watching Harlan Huckabee and Gordy Bell and Rob Lytle and all those guys. Never can remember being associated on a team where backs had as many 50-yard plus runs as we had in this one ball game, or 47. Count that one. I mean, there's 4 or 5 long runs, and the backs were impressive thing to me about the 2 backs in this game was they were making people miss inside the box. And when you have low safeties that are getting down to linebacker depth, by the time the backs have crossed the line of scrimmage, there's going to be somebody unblocked. You have 11 on offense, 11 on defense. Take the quarterback out because he's handing off. He can't block anybody, and the back himself can't block anybody. So that's really 9 blocking 11. So somebody's going to have – the back's going to have to make somebody miss to come out clean. And they were making people miss inside, making the linebacker miss, or getting to the soft shoulder and running through the arm tackle and then bouncing. But our backs are doing a really good job right now of not just bouncing. There's a time to bounce. There is always a time to bounce. But initially, I mean, they were getting those long runs because they were making people miss inside and then bouncing. Very impressive.
Nick?
It seemed like the box score has shorted Khaleke a couple TFLs. What did you guys see from him overall? And speaking of stuff you hadn't seen before, the 8th game, I guess, is what he's fared for now. That's
8 TFLs, 3 sacks, 15 tackles, 1 forced fumble, and could have been 2 blocked punts. He was everywhere. He was. You don't see that every day. The kind of performance that number 7 had. It was outstanding, and there was other great performances as well. I mean, Khaleke was a shining star.
And last week you talked about you wanted to see how Brandon handled being the starter in practice, handled his week of practice. Do you like what you've seen from him from a day-to-day standpoint, consistency-wise, to say that you're comfortable with him as your starter now going forward here?
Yes. Brandon will be the starter again this week, God willing, and the creek don't rise. He'll be starting the game. He had an excellent week of practice. Put a real exclamation point on the ball game that he had last week, and great to see him start and the team to get the win. That's 3 quarterbacks on our ball club that have started and won a ball game for us. I think there's a couple others in the country, Maryland another, and Houston. So we're one of 3 clubs that have done that. But we feel like onward.
Stay on the left there, Ryan.
Coach, how has Wilton been progressing? Is there a chance he could return to the field pretty soon?
Yes, there is. I think there's more second opinions to be had, but I know Wilton's really excited about his most recent CAT scan. That I think it's kind of stunned them. Maybe this will sound over the top, but I think some of the doctors are a bit stunned that it's so far along, and he's healing well. I mean, young guys can do that sometimes. I mean, they good blood flow throughout their body. Noticed it with and these guys are right there, and they're young and healthy, and he's healing fast.
Come back over to the right here, John.
Coach, you mentioned the wide receiver blocking and so many other positives from Saturday. Is there a key this many weeks in to keep guys doing those things at this time of year?
I mean, it's you can't motivate the unmotivated, and we have players that are self-starters and willing to motivate themselves because they want to do well. I mean, but it was really it was at a high level. This ball game, the way look at kickoff coverage, and guys are running down there. Ben Mason, had maybe one of their best hits of the ball game. I'm their best special teams player, and there was examples, throughout. Defensive line all graded out in a winning performance, and they were knocking them back. And there was one span where Minnesota had 135 yards total yardage, and then 15 minutes, 20 minutes later in the game, they had lost 20. It was down to 95 or so there was impressive things. Secondary covered well, tackled good, made good adjustments. Good team win.
Back right, Adam.
Jim, after the Rutgers game, Patrick Kugler was saying that the offensive line, they'd heard the chatter that the O-line maybe wasn't consistent all year. He said they took it upon themselves to win that game. Looks like they had kind of similar will this past weekend. What are the major changes you've noticed with the offensive line this past couple of weeks?
Improvement, just it's improving in precision and timing and strain and hustle. Always felt the improvement leads to success. Theory.
What's a guy like Steven Speight?
Very physical player, very smart player, highly motivated player. Very, very sharp and focused. And he's the guy who's really changed his body over the last year. I mean, some do, some don't. But the ones that are really motivated do. And I know they call Ben Mason Bench Mason. I mean, I'd take that as a compliment. If I was Ben Mason, it warms the cockles of my heart to hear that. And Steven Spinellis, though he doesn't have a nickname, I mean, he has done a fabulous job in the weight room.
In the middle, Casey.
Quinn Nordine, have you talked to him about what improvements are you making with his kicking game?
We'll work on that this week. Talked about it after the game. What we saw as coaches was he picked his head up too early and got his left side ahead of the right, out of sync, and pulled the ball to the left.
Got time for about two more. Come to the left, Aaron.
You were without Ty Isaac, Grant Perry, Michael Onwenu, and Ty Wheatley. Do you anticipate having them back Saturday, or what's the plan?
Yeah, there's a very good chance. That all could be back Saturday, but questionable.
Nick, you're good. You got it. Angela, did you have something? No. Chris.
If Wilton comes back healthy, do you open up the quarterback competition as he returns the starter, or is that an ongoing competition?
Pardon me?
With Wilton, if he comes back healthy, is that an ongoing competition then within Brandon, or have you kind of made Brandon the starter for the rest of the way?
As we said, always, I mean, once somebody's back, that's when we'd address that. Back out there practicing and competing.
Can he be back at practice this week, or he has to get another scan? Is it today?
There'll be things he'll be able to do. Isn't cleared for contact, but cleared to do some throwing and exercises.
We saw Nico Collins go out of the game. Do you have any status update on him?
No.
Last question, Adam.
Jim, back to the offensive line. Is this more of a? You mentioned the improvement with the offensive line. Is this a rhythm thing with offensive line running backs, or is this running backs are benefiting from the offensive line, or the running backs just picking it up more? How is this flow going? Is this a lot to do with the offensive line, the success on the ground?
Yes, it does have a lot to do with the offensive line, the backs, the wide receivers, the tight ends, quarterbacks. I mean, it's all 11. Improvement, the precision. Back when you were asking, where does this go? How do you get better? I mean, talked at length about, it's all 11.
Do you feel like there's some rhythm there now?
Yeah, I think we've improved, and we'll continue to strive to, see how good we can get.
Did you know that ticket prices can actually go down right before the game? That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time tracks ticket prices in real time from thousands of trusted sellers, then shows you all the best deals. So we can get tickets at the last minute for up to 60% off. Download Game Time now.
All right, let's get straight into some highlights. Halfway through the first quarter, young quarterback Brandon Peters is going to toss it to McCune on a tight end screen, and he's going to take it in for the Michigan touchdown. Here's another angle for you folks. Nothing but open field for the tight end as he goes in for the score. Later on in the first, Michigan up 7. Minnesota Ballencroft tosses it to Rodney Smith. He lowers his shoulder, and he's going to tie it up with a Golden Gopher touchdown. Few plays later, Michigan has the ball back now deep in their own territory. Handoff to Karan Higdon, who is gone. There goes that man, James. Higdon takes it in for the touchdown, a 77-yard run. Second quarter now, Michigan up 6 with the ball. Brandon Peters is going to hand it off to Chris Evans. He's going to make a couple guys miss and breaks through the line. It's a touchdown run for Evans, and he would go on to have 2 on the day. Third quarter, Peters hands it off to Chris Evans again. Oh, excuse me. Kraft back to pass. Khaleke Hudson, he had a crazy great game. James strip sack for the sophomore, and now we take it later to third. It's going to be handoff to Chris Evans, and he's going to score again. This is the second touchdown run for the sophomore back, and it goes for 67 yards. The Wolverines literally ran all over this Golden Gopher defense, James. Michigan goes on to win 33-10 to keep the little brown jug in Ann Arbor.
What do you make of that Sean McCune giving his own student section the shh sound, the be quiet? I didn't get that one. My partner in crime, Tom Downey, on our Michigan Recap show, he didn't understand either. We put on our Michigan-only bruh on Saturday night on the show we had, but that was about the only troubling thing I saw from this game. Other than that, Michigan basically did whatever they want on the ground, and then my main man, Khaleke Hudson, we were raving about him in the out-of-conference games, Lena, and he kind of had a quiet last 3 or 4 games. He came to play. That's the best game by a Michigan defender in, I don't know, 5 years. I couldn't even think of the last one.
I think this is one of the best games Michigan's put up in a while. So we're going to bring up a reaction poll for you guys. Who was your Michigan man of the day on Saturday? Give us a like for Karan Higdon, some love for Chris Evans, a little shock face for Khaleke Hudson with his shocking performance, and laugh if you're laughing at Brandon Peters and some of the numbers he put up, James.
Yeah, I mean, Peters, I think I always want to kind of lean towards the quarterback, especially when it's a quarterback that can make such an impact like Peters has. Not in his performance, he only threw the ball 13 times. I think 8 of 13 was the number, and 5 in the second half. But really, this entire Michigan program has been re-energized, revitalized since Brandon Peters took over in the middle of the second quarter just 9-10 days ago, Lena. So it's not like it's been a long time. He's only had 1 start under his belt. It's a game under the lights against a Minnesota team that really came motivated to play. They've got a rah-rah guy in P.J. Flecker's the coach. I thought they'd give Michigan a game, but after that first touchdown, we showed they scored to tie it up at 7. It was all Michigan. It was all Michigan on the ground, and it was a suffocating defense after that to get the big win.
All right, guys, keep on putting your reactions in. We want to welcome you into the Michigan Football Report Tuesday edition, James. I'm your host, Lena Bond. Like I said, this is our Michigan Football Insider, James Yoder. Before we get into the fun of everything, we want to thank our sponsor, Game Time, for coming along on the ride. Game Time is the #1 app on the App Store for all last-minute tickets. We're talking NFL, NBA, MLB, college, you name it, they have it, James.
It's not just sports anymore either. It's concerts. It's theater tickets.
Everything.
It's not just football. It's baseball. It's basketball. So a little tip to you folks in Detroit, if you're within that 45-minute radius of Detroit, you can go to the Pistons games this week, almost any game, for $10. That's a brand new arena. But if you're in the D.C. area, a lot of folks graduate from Michigan, matriculate over to D.C. You know, Maryland's only a 25-minute drive. You can see Michigan play there this Saturday afternoon. Look at that. $40, $50 for some of the best seats in the house in the Game Time app. I just went to StubHub, the Maryland website, twice the price. So we're big fans of Game Time. Go to chatsports.com/tickets. Whether you have iPhone or Android, it's going to drop you right in the respective app store to download it.
All right, moving along with our Michigan report. Let's talk hot or not. Definitely some hot and not performances against Minnesota. First, I think this is a pretty obvious one here, James. Khaleke Hudson is hot.
This guy is smoking hot, okay? He is not just, he is white coal hot. That was the best game as far as a tackle for loss perspective in Big Ten history. Not just Michigan history, Big Ten history. 8 tackles for loss. Now, somehow, I think Michigan gave him a little credit for ones he shouldn't have had because they only really credited him, I think, 6.5 during the broadcast, but he gained another 1.5 between Saturday night and Monday when they released the official stats. But Khaleke Hudson is red hot. He was everywhere. He reminded me a lot of Devin Bush in that first game against Florida, where the entire college football world was raving about the speed of Bush, making plays all over the place. So Khaleke Hudson, smoking hot. He's the best. He's the best defensive player in the Big Ten this past week, without question.
Oh, without question, and he earned some Big Ten honors. And like you said, he broke the Big Ten record for tackles for a loss. Do you know who held that formally?
I actually do. It's my main man, Larry Foote, out of Detroit. Went on to an illustrious career in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and got into some great play on the field and some interesting stuff off the field in his time in Ann Arbor about 16, 17 years ago.
Khaleke Hudson definitely in good company there. Let's take a look now at our running backs, another position group that was red hot on Saturday. James ran for almost 400 total yards and 4 touchdowns, just video game numbers.
Yeah, the running backs, just these two guys amongst themselves, 200 for Higdon, 191 for Evans. I kind of wish they'd have gave Evans a couple carries in the fourth quarter when they easily could have and got him to the 200. That would have been pretty cool to see. But you know what really impressed me is how both guys broke tackles. This could have been a 20-yard gain here that we're showing. It could have even got caught from behind, but he took it to the house. Another one later, Evans shrugged off multiple tacklers inside the 20-yard line to take it into the end zone. And I haven't seen Michigan take this many runs 40, 50, 60 yards downfield. I think they had at least 4 over 50 yards in this game. 3 of them for sure on touchdowns. This one from Evans here is my favorite of the day. Maybe my favorite of the year. 1, 2, 3 block tackles. He's going to break another one here. That's 4. And then this is what I really like here, Lena, about the 10, 15-yard line. Oh, I'm sorry, it was a different play, but there's the one that he took the other touchdown in. That was phenomenal. So the running backs are hot. And Ty Isaac was the guy 6 weeks ago. We were saying, this is your starter. Give him all the carries. He's hurt this week. We get 2 guys like Karan Higdon and Chris Evans just completely show that Michigan's, stable running backs they have. We're not even talking about guys like Amari Samuels and some others that had been, getting their name in there for some playing time. So a lot of talent in that Michigan running back. And both those guys back next year, and Evans for potentially another 2 years.
All right, next now, if you're going to give the running back some love, you got to give the offensive line some love, James, opening up all those holes for our boys on Saturday.
I was the guy last Friday saying that Greg Fry's job is likely in jeopardy. I gave it a 4 Harbaugh on the FACK Harbaugh rumor-o-meter because I have heard rumblings from people very close to that offensive staff that said he's just not fitting in. The other guys have been together for a couple years. Pep Hamilton knew Drevno and Harbaugh, so he's part of the good old boys club. And Fry's just an outsider coming in. But him and Tim Drevno, I got to give him some credit because I was calling for those guys to, hit the road a couple weeks back when Michigan couldn't do anything on offense under John O'Corn. Under Brandon Peters, the offensive passing game isn't doing anything great, but this running game is coming out of nowhere. Back-to-back 300-plus yard games. The offensive line is a big part of that.
Well, yeah, the Wolverines turned out 334 yards on 51 carries against Rutgers, and that was a season high. And it just took under 3 quarters to do that against the Golden Gophers on Saturday. So great offensive line play, no doubt. But there were some not so great performances throughout the season, especially on Saturday. And one thing that we're worried about over here, James, is just the health of the offense.
Yeah, so 6 players who have been significant starters or started for one reason or another were out on Saturday. Now, 2 of them we knew. It's Tariq Black and Wilton Speight.
Right.
That's obvious. You've got your number 1 quarterback coming into the year, your leading receiver when he went out, and Tariq Black, your number 1 guy. But Ty Isaac was your starting running back for a big part of the season. Michael Onwenu was out this game with an injury. None of these were disclosed, so nobody knew it until about 20 minutes before the game. Grant Perry, your leading receiver, and then Tyrone Wheatley Jr., who has gotten a lot of snaps at tight end. He started a couple games. I think most people would say Sean McCune is your true starter, but big-time contributors, but they didn't miss a beat. Cesar Ruiz stepped in. I think we said John Runyon Jr. and some other guys got some snaps when Ruiz had some struggles. He gave up a big hit where Peters went down, but to get 370 yards on offense and 2 players with 190-plus rushing is a big testament to the preparation of the coaching staff and this team throughout the week. To lose 4 guys in the last few days leading up to the game and 6 total and still have that kind of offensive output.
All right, last note for you guys. Michigan's wide receiver core, the production has been nearly non-existent the last few weeks, James.
Yeah, I guess some people want to say, let's blame that on Brandon Peters. They're only throwing 12, 13, 14 times a game. But even when they're throwing, they're not throwing to these wide receivers. It's all to tight end. We've even called it tight end screens, Lena. Tight end screens are being substituted for any passes downfield. And it's not like Brandon Peters is the cause of this or the Michigan attack under Peters. They weren't catching the ball. They weren't getting open under John O'Corn. They weren't doing much except for a couple long balls to Tariq Black and to Kakoa Crawford under Wilton Speight. Did the receivers do anything? So this wide receiver crew is very young, But other than Grand Prairie here and there, they've really done nothing this entire season.
Well, it's the type of issue that for me, like I feel like it's easily covered up against the likes of Rutgers or Minnesota and even this week's opponent, Maryland. But going down the stretch, it's something that I feel like cannot be hidden when we face Wisconsin or Ohio State in the Big House to close the regular season. That's when it's going to come back and bite this offense.
It's why I think they should, and I've been questioning the Michigan offensive coaching staff for several seasons now, is when you're up by 3 or 4 touchdowns, why do you just hand the ball off? I understand that you don't always want to get the game over with and win and you get out of there and go home, but why not give Brandon Peters the chance to throw? Why not just say, okay, hey, you know what, guys, we're up 33-7, 4 minutes left in the game. Let's just throw 6 straight plays, whatever happens. What's the worst that could happen? A pick 6, he gets hit? Well, you're going to have that happen no matter what quarter you're playing against, too. So I wish they'd have got Peters more throws. I really hope they do against Maryland. I think that game is going to play out kind of like this one, where Michigan will dominate on the ground a bunch. And if they get up by 3 scores in the second half, I really want to see him give Peters the opportunity to throw the ball more.
Well, good news is that Harbaugh is hopeful that Perry does return this week, which should help the young quarterback.
Well, he said he was hopeful that all 4 guys that were out this past week, and then a 5th in Wilton Speight may return. Tariq Black, actually, he was called, out for the year, but he may return before the year's over, maybe even the bowl game. But talk about this question here: should Michigan have let Peters throw more? I don't know what the coaching staff thinks, and they're the only ones that really matter in this situation, but I think absolutely, because you've got 2 games that could really turn your season from a lost season 3 weeks ago when they got crushed by Penn State. Everyone in the world piling on that Michigan's done, Harbaugh's overrated, all this stuff. If you beat Wisconsin, you go into that Michigan game, you're not going to win the Big Ten, but you have a chance to have a 10-2 regular season, beat 2 top 10 teams to end the year. I don't know if you could ask for better than that. If you said at the beginning of the year, hey, you're going to beat Ohio State, you're going to beat a top 5 Wisconsin, and you're going to have 2 losses, one of which came down to the last possession. I think most Michigan fans would be like, okay, cool. Then and Brandon Peters is the quarterback, and let us those wins. Oh, great, we're top 5 next year for sure. So I think you got to get Peters the ball more in the air for Michigan to have a chance to beat Wisconsin and certainly Ohio State.
All right, guys, one more time. I am Lena Bond. Next to me is James Yoder, our Michigan football insider.
Michigan football insider.
There is no other, James.
Don't disrespect me, Lena. Don't disrespect me. There's a lot of universities in Ohio, but they call it the Ohio State University for the reason, the rival. I am the Michigan football insider.
My bad, James. All right, let's get to our rumor-o-meter segment. I love this segment, James. Let's go ahead and bring up how this works for the audience at home. So 0 Harbaughs means totally false. What we're talking about here, there's no credibility to it. 1 Harbaugh, small shred of truth, could be real. 2 Harbaughs, people are a-talking, the rumor mill is a-turning. 3 Harbaughs is pretty likely. We're pretty confident with our sources that this is true. And then 4 Harbaughs, what is that, James?
That's a fact, Lena. F-A-C-K. That's how Jim Harbaugh spells it. That's how we spell it, okay? Harbaugh spells it fact, we spell it fact. And we say it fact, too.
Fact. F-A-C-K, fact. So our first rumor meter is a fact here at Chat Sports, and Speight is ready to play against Maryland.
Lena, we broke the story last week. We're one of the few outlets that had enough confidence in the right sources to go ahead with this. He's going to be ready to play this week. I don't know what it says about whether he will play. I think sometimes the Michigan coaching staff, even though they say it's a meritocracy, even though they say that the best guy wins, you'd have to say Brandon Peters is your best guy now, no matter what you've seen of Wilton Speight in seasons past. But I don't know if they're not going to put Speight in to give him some throws and prep him for Wisconsin. They may be sitting there and say, okay, this guy's back to health. He may have even been able to play last week against Minnesota if he really needed him. He's back. Do we not give him, half the snaps against Maryland, especially if they're up by a touchdown, and prep him for a week of competition going into the Wisconsin and the Ohio State game? I can't say that. What I can say is Wilton Speight's going to be on the sideline in uniform this weekend, and if Brandon Peters struggles or if Michigan's not winning, I think you're going to see some Wilton Speight in that lineup.
Little quarterback controversy going on up in Ann Arbor?
I certainly hope not, because no one other than Brandon Peters has shown any reason that they should be on any #1 list on a quarterback depth chart other than Brandon Peters. But the coaches love Speight, and they put him in their starter for 2 seasons for a reason.
All right, we talked about this a little bit earlier, James, but some injuries coming back. Onwenu, Isaac, Perry, and Wheatley to return this week.
Yeah, we put it as a 2 Harbaugh, which means, people are talking, most of those people being actually Jim Harbaugh. He was talking, he was asked about it during the press conference, and I've deciphered Harbaugh press conferences for 3 years as Michigan's coach, for 4 at 49ers, Stanford, and beyond. He almost is like Jim McElwain at Florida got fired for basically lying at press conferences. I think that's for another reason, but I think Jim Harbaugh actually does most times say the exact opposite of where the actual truth is in most situations. So what this means to me is one of those guys might be playing. It's probably going to be Ty Isaac, maybe Grant Perry. I don't think Michael Onwenu is going to play. I doubt Ty Wheatley Jr. just based on their injuries. So I would say we give it two out of 4, mostly because I think 2 or 4 of these guys are going to play, and Harbaugh just tells people, why give DJ Durkin, Maryland's coach, Michigan's former defensive coordinator, why give him anything not to prepare for?
He does love keeping other teams on their toes. Next rumor-o-meter for you guys. Peters was ready to quit the team in August, James?
All right. Breaking news. Wait a second. Can we call back to the to the production room? I think we need one of those red bars across the screen. This is one of these breaking news. We got a little as we hear on the tickers and the podcast out there. So, Brandon Peters, Lena, I've been sitting on the story for 2 weeks, and we're going to go ahead and talk about it today. Okay. I reached out to some people at Michigan. I reached out to some people in Peters High School. Didn't get anybody want to talk about it on or off the record. So we're going to put it out there, and this is the story. Okay, I'm going to go back into February, March, April 2016. Brandon Peters comes on campus early at Michigan, graduates in January, comes on to Michigan, misses the second half of his senior year of high school, competes for the job, super homesick, quiet guy with a lot of more boisterous personalities, especially in that freshman class who graduated early. Didn't fit in, wanted to go home. Coaching staff talked about it, parents talked about it, high school coach talked about it. Okay, 6 through, red shirts last year, doesn't see any playing time, that's fine. Expects to get the job, and I think when he got recruited, Jim Harbaugh and the Michigan coaching staff kind of told him that, year 2, you're the guy. We don't have anybody else on the roster. You're the guy in year 2, so prepare for that. And then he comes in, doesn't win the backup job, goes to number 3, and what we've been talking, and this comes from some of the best sources you can get on Michigan football outside of Jim Harbaugh texting me this to himself, is that he approached the Michigan coaching staff about schools that he would potentially want to transfer from and how that process would work so he could sit out this year and be able to play in 2018. Somehow, and this is where the conversation gets a little foggy, is why, one is why. I think the why is probably easy, is because he didn't win the starting job and thought he should have, thought he was a better player. I think he's proven that he's a better player, but it sounds like there's some attitude issues, maturity issues. And then, how did he not end up transferring? How do you go to your coaches and say, hey, I think this isn't the right place for me? How do I get out of my scholarship? And you still end up on the team. So somebody convinced him to stay. I don't know who that was, but after Speight underperformed in his first couple games, then he got injured. Then O'Korn came in. We heard that it was mopey Brandon Peters who had head down, not engaged, not in the realm of like the conversations, not kind of playing like a guy who's one snap away. But something clicked around the not the Michigan State game. The week after that, when it became clear that John O'Korn wasn't the guy, he kind of popped out of it, and a light came on during practice enough that Michigan said, okay, cool. If O'Korn plays poorly in the second quarter of last week's game, we're going to put you in against Rutgers, and then now we see against Maryland, Minnesota gets the start. I think you're going to see him as your starting quarterback the rest of this year and have the opportunity to be that starting quarterback for the next several years if he can fight off the freshman Dylan McCaffrey. I don't think Wilton Speight's going to be any part of that conversation going forward, though.
I'm sure I speak for a lot of Michigan fans when we say we are happy that he did not leave the program over the summer. Number 4 on our rumor-o-meter, Harbaugh took over the direction of the offense after the Penn State game. James?
Yeah, I mean, so this has got 3 Harbaughs on it, which means it's pretty likely. I'm not going to go as far as say that I had a great source on this one, but I've heard enough people talk about this is the case, is that he gave a lot of leeway to Pep Hamilton, who he's known for a long time, and to Tim Drevno, who he's been as his right-hand man for over a decade. And as you saw, it wasn't happening. And by the way, his son, the running backs didn't start playing good until Jim Harbaugh got involved in this. So this is pretty likely that he went from hands-off approach, okay, bring to me what you got, bring me a game plan, to stop. I got the game plan, and we better freaking execute this game plan, or everyone's head's in the chopping block. So I think the last 2 weeks, Jim Harbaugh has really cemented his kind of fist on this Michigan offense. And what that means is, okay, we don't have the guy to throw the ball 60 times downfield. Great, let's put it on the ground. Let's work on different blocking schemes. Let's get the ball into the hands of these running backs, and let's throw things in there like the tight end screen. We have not seen that from Tim Drevno in these last 2.5 years. I think that's Jim Harbaugh pulling that in himself. Yep.
Well, you know what they say, James. If you want it done right, you gotta do it yourself.
Gotta do it yourself.
Last rumor meter for you guys, and just a reminder of how this all works. Players were complaining or complained of challenge practices, excuse me, after the Penn State game.
Yeah, so challenging practices, right? So the practices were too challenging. I heard it from a lot of people that, you know, there was some discourse. Look at what are these uniforms? Those LSU uniforms, but that's players are complaining of challenging practices after the Penn State game. It's kind of when Jim Harbaugh put his hands in the offense a little bit, that he was just riding them. We're going to run, we're going to hit, we're going to run, we're going to hit until we get this thing down. And it sounded like for at least a couple practices in there right after that Penn State blowout loss that there were some guys with the like, F this, you know, who does he think we are? Like, I'm not going to do that. And it sounds like there was some sort of team speech that Harbaugh gave 2 weeks ago where it was, you guys don't think you can handle this type of practices. How are we ever going to handle winning championships? And the team is kind of, you know, bonded together. And they got 2 wins after that over some pretty pedestrian programs. It's really going to see, is it working? It's not going to be this Saturday. It's going to be the next 2 after that against Wisconsin and then at home versus Ohio State.
All right, guys, before we wrap things up here, we just want to thank Game Time one last time for this being an amazing app and giving us the cheapest tickets you can possibly find on the internet,
Up
James.
to 60% off concert tickets, sports tickets, if not more. We're sitting here in Dallas, Lena. I pull up tickets. You can get Mavs tickets for like $9, face value like $65. If you're in Detroit, if you're in this the greater Detroit area, you can go to Pistons games, Red Wings games, Lions games for way cheaper than you can get anywhere else. If you're in DC area, go to the Michigan-Maryland game. Tickets half off what their face value is.
This is how I see it. You said Mav games $9. I saw games for as low as $6,
really?
James. So in my head, I'm like, do I want to go to Starbucks and get that venti like caramel frappuccino, or do I want to go watch a Mavs game? Like,
You know, for me personally, I'm probably going to go on the right side and get the Frappuccino for the Mavs. But if it's the Pistons and I'm living in Detroit, maybe it's a Pistons game, yeah.
Fair enough, fair enough. Go download Game Time now. It's the #1 app on the App Store. Fantastic prices. But that is all the time we have for you guys today. For James Yoder, I am Lena Bond. We will catch you next time.